Welcome. Good afternoon. It's Thursday, February 10th. We're trying to start something a little new this week and have this Lucky Trader Lounge a little earlier in the day, more of like a happy hour. We found sometimes when we were doing them late at night, people wanted it a little earlier in the day, and then you can take it in live or in the podcast stream that we have below in the description. So today we have Tyler D joining me. Last time you were on, I think we were talking about magic.
We
But
were.
yeah, it's great to have you on. We're going to sort of go through just like the state of NFTs and what's been going on this week. As in the description, like we're going to talk about Rug Radio is one of the big ones this week. Obviously, the cool pets. They finished off minting today. So how's it going today, Tyler?
It's good. It feels like a slower week in the markets a little bit, at least volume wise. And, we've seen a pullback kind of across the board, but, no lack of headlines or news or drama. So there's still a ton to walk through. So excited to be back on the show.
Yeah, and I know that there's been a lot this week just going on in general, like every week really, but um for me, like I know yesterday the Rug Radio drop was a big one. I know you're in Rug Radio, and as I mentioned in the description of this video, like I think what they're doing is pretty unique, and if they're successful in creating this like brand, I'm not sure how you would word it, like um it's more than just a project. It's kind of an ecosystem in a way that they're trying to build out. I don't know what would the word be if you had like one to describe what Rug Radio is trying to create.
Yeah, I mean, they use the word platform, but, I almost view it as a company,
Yeah, it's
or
like
a
it's like
conglomerate,
the
like a media company.
I was thinking conglomerate, but I didn't know if that was like too big of a word. Yeah, they're trying to like, I think of it as sort of a tree where they're the trunk and they're trying to give a bunch of outlets to other people to grow. Obviously, like Farouk has been doing a lot of these Twitter spaces, and yesterday he had one with Paris Hilton. He's had some big names on there, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, I guess let's get into a little of what they're doing. I can pull this up. So Rug Radio, as they mentioned, for the people, by the people, and that's sort of Web3 in a nutshell as well. So it's fitting in my idea. But so what's sort of your take on Rug Radio?
Yeah, so they definitely have big visions, and I'm buying into the vision. Uh, I love the potential for where this can go. So right on the page, first paragraph. What is Rug Radio? First fully decentralized media platform. What does this mean? It means that our community, our hosts, and you own the platform you participate in. So right off the bat, we've got the Web3 ethos, right? It's shared, it's decentralized. Everyone can own and participate, which is certainly different than the media landscape that we've experienced to date in Web 2. So I really appreciate that. I like the idea. I guess kind of backing up and a bit of the history, as I understand it, is Farouk and other NFT influencers, for lack of a better term, they were doing these marathon Twitter Spaces last year. And some of these would stretch on for 4 hours, 8 hours, like 10 hours. And then from what I understand, Farouk had this idea, it would be great if people could earn income, from attending and participating in these spaces. And that's, I believe, like the brainchild which started this platform. And I think that's the piece of the vision that I'm so excited about, is it ties into that universal basic income and, essentially participate to earn. So
Right.
that
Yeah.
definitely got me
Participate.
excited.
I've heard them talking of that. It's kind of like a Poe app, but there's not a huge market, a resale market for Poe apps, but this you can have that.
Yeah, it's like the natural evolution. And I think, Farouk started with POAPs, actually. I think if you attended a few of his spaces, you got POAPs. I think there's a famous, Farouk meets Beanie, and they like made peace or something, and there was a POAP that came from that. But the reality is, there's no market for your POAPs. There are specific use cases for POAPs, and I like those, and I could see them, sticking around. But a POAP for attending a Twitter space is not a valuable asset, and no one's ever going to pay for that. So I think he realized that there has to be another model that comes into play, and I think that's where we've seen that this where the NFTs and the token for Rogue Radio kind of come into play.
Yeah, so I guess how are they creating this demand for the token for someone who like didn't participate? Like that's always the thing with me for the POAP is it's like for instance, I had one for Time. They had a drop that, maybe I attended their spaces, but why would someone else want that from me? So I think the way that they're sort of creating it is like all these they through the liquidity pools, right? And just the fact that there's a monetary value versus like they have the DAO token. So there's like the governance side of it as well, right?
Yeah, so maybe it makes sense for us to talk a little bit about the infrastructure, and then we can get into
Yeah.
the demand a little bit. So, if we scroll down here, there's two Rogue Radio NFTs. There's a token yielding utility NFT, and then there's a membership pass. I actually want to start with the membership pass. So this was the foundational NFT for Rogue Radio. I believe it's called a Rogue Radio membership pass. And this was the first step to enter the Rogue Radio ecosystem. I want to say it was 0.111 ETH.
Yeah.
And then what you got for that NFT was the chance to mint the utility NFT for free, which has now taken place. There was 19,000 of the membership passes. Now there's 19,000 of the utility NFTs. But the utility isn't totally gone. So for someone who's new to this, I now view the membership pass as almost like a whitelist pass. So I believe the Rug Radio community will be a highly sought after community to target for those who are looking to launch new projects. It is certainly going to be one of the more avid user bases. And I think that is one potential utility for the membership NFT.
And so the membership, this Mint Pass, the count on it is different than that Genesis NFT, correct?
It might be. So
it's you didn't burn it. You didn't have to burn it in order to get it. Like you could still hold it after minting that Genesis.
Correct. You could still hold it after you minted it. A lot of people went ahead and sold off. And we can see, the floor price is sitting right around 0.127 right now. At peak, I want to say it hit around 0.3 or so. But again, the utility is really in the other token, which is the Rug Radio Genesis.
For NFT.
Now. Correct. Yeah. For now.
Because the way that I think of it, kind of like what you said, is like this is the Genesis NFT, but if they do become more of like a conglomerate where, say, like podcasts beneath them or something, they want to have their own NFT specific to their community, likely you're probably going to need that initial membership pass in order to get on that next whitelist, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I believe Farouk would want to reward the membership pass holders too.
Yeah, he seems to have a good grasp of just like the general market and the idea of continuing to give value to previous things. Like we see that with Pixel Vault a lot, where they generally, like if you held any of the other items they've had previously, it's more likely that you're going to get rewarded with either an airdrop or just the potential of being on a future whitelist.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some examples of these ecosystems and universes where the utility all stems back from the original NFT. And I think Farouk, I know he's been on several panels talking about community building. I think he's certainly spent a lot of time thinking about that. And the foundational NFT, the Genesis NFT, of course, is always going to be an important part of community building. So I'm in the camp that I think he'll reward the holders.
Yeah. So then, as far as now that we have it, yesterday they dropped the initial set of tokens, or based on your rarity, you got anywhere between it was 555 for the lowest. It went 555, 888, 1111 for the amount of tokens you were going to get. So I guess let's touch a little on that and what these tokens now are going to provide.
Yeah, so that membership NFT originally gave you the opportunity to mint the utility NFT or the Rogue Radio Genesis, and we've got a nice little infographic here that lays it out. So there's essentially 5 different tiers. The lowest tier is the standard, and there's 11,111 of those, and then it goes to scarce 2, scarce 1, rare 2, and then rare 1. Rare 1 being the rarest, and there's only 11 of those. And each of those has a different token yield and a token bonus. So I think you listed off the bonus. That was the initial airdrop that was claimable for anyone who held these NFTs yesterday when they launched the site. And then the second and evergreen ongoing earning mechanism behind these NFTs is the Rogue token yield per day. So on the low end, the standard NFT is going to earn 5 Rogue tokens per day, and then on the high end, 11. So not a ton of difference really, between the lowest tier and the highest tier on the per day token yield.
But the initial drop, it was a little more spread out, but like percentage wise, probably about the same anyway.
Yeah, well, I think we see in the tweet. Yep. So 555 was the standard, 888 was for scarce 1 and 2, and then 1,111 for the rares. And we saw some interesting price action, for the Rug token yesterday, right off the drop. So
yeah,
I want to say it came out around $1 or $2. It went all the way up to about $3, and then we saw a lot more selling into the night. It's since settled right around the $1 range. But still certainly a nice little airdrop for anyone who had some of these tokens. And now essentially we have an idea of how much it's going to be earning per day, and it's $5 per day, per standard NFT, and then you can do the math up from there on out.
Yeah, and then I think what makes it a little more interesting than some of these other tokens that drop, like say that SOS or gas, where people were immediately trying to dump them. It's 1,800 tokens in order to get sort of upgrade to the DAO token, where you have a little more like voting rights and things like that. So they have created reasons to buy more tokens and not just dump them, even though obviously a lot of people are like, oh, this is free half an ETH or whatever, and they dump it. But now that people have tokens and they're earning them each day, like you said, it sort of adds up over time if it holds at this sort of $1. But do they have any sort of mechanic as far as burning when you get the DAO token? Does that burn all of the tokens that it was the 1,800?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I feel like it would need to.
Sort of makes sense that they would set it up that way, but I'm not sure if they have any other syncs like that.
Right, I'll try to look into that and see if I can get an answer, and then share that in the show notes. But you're spot on. That is the primary utility of the Rug token, and I alluded to the dollar value, but the real utility is you trade in 1,800, and then you get an RDAO token, and that represents your ownership and governance of Rug Radio. So I look at it as investing in a share of the company. So essentially, that's what your RDAO token would enable for you. And then I think back to your earlier question, that's where we can see the demand will stem from.
Yeah. Now, the other side of it is, which I think could be really cool with them, is being able to like host and have like subset, like sub. I'm not sure what you would call them, but like a sub podcast, like beneath a podcast. Um, so like if I were to say upgrade to a DAO token, do I get any sort of like direct access to Farouk, or like, oh, I get to have one spaces hosted by him or someone connected through Rug Radio itself, like sponsored by?
So are there extra perks for our DAO members? I
Yeah.
have to imagine there will be, right? It's just another aspect of community building and driving demand. So I don't believe any have been announced yet, as far as I know, but it certainly is logical, and I think we can certainly expect that.
Yeah.
Um,
So then the other thing we were planning to talk about is sort of the P2E, H2E kind of aspect of this. So I guess let's get into that a little bit.
yeah, I think that's the piece that excites me the most. I want to pull back their website and see if there's any infographics on the main page. Um, yeah, so I think they've executed their roadmap at this point. Their shows have debuted and they've launched the platform. So they now have a schedule of Rug Radio branded shows, and I believe they're all primarily Twitter Spaces at this point in time. And they've got, I want to say, like 20 to 25 shows per week right now under the Rug Radio umbrella.
Yeah.
The mechanism isn't rolled out just yet, but the idea for P2E, or participate to earn, in this context is that simply by attending these Twitter Spaces, you will be able to earn additional rug tokens, which then you can accumulate over time and then convert those to RDAO tokens and have increased ownership in the pool. And that's where it has the tie into universal basic income, and I think it's a really powerful concept that we haven't seen explored yet, and that's really what gets me excited. I know I kind of ignored Twitter Spaces for most of last year, and then I've started participating in a lot more recently, and I think a driver for that is really, for me, it's to understand kind of the caliber of people who are talking, especially ones who are tied to projects. I've kind of shifted my NFT investment strategy to be based on people and teams, and looking at NFTs as like startup investing, or investing in small, project teams, essentially small companies. And listening to these folks who lead these projects talk on these Twitter Spaces is one of the best ways to identify, the caliber, how sharp they are, their real vision for the project. And on top of that, if I can attend these spaces and earn, some rug tokens while I do that, I'm going to try to attend as many as I can per day.
Yeah.
Right. That can fit around my schedule.
Yeah. And that's one thing we've been doing a lot with Lucky Trader, is trying to hop into those like town halls that are done through the Twitter Spaces. And what I really like about it is it's a way for there to be a direct like Q&A with the community, or not the community, like a Discord, Discord chats and Discord, just the voice chats that they have on there as well. You almost have to be like part of the Discord already. Here, you could have just anyone hop on and ask a question if they're interested in buying in, if they're already part of it. And it's really cool to do that with like the town halls. But what's nice with like what Farouk's doing, as I mentioned before, he had like Paris Hilton on yesterday. He's getting a lot bigger names because this is becoming a bigger brand. So you're one of the people I heard yesterday who came up as a speaker. The first thing they asked, they're like, hi Paris, like never thought I'd be able to talk to you, So it's really cool how you can connect through something like Twitter Spaces, where obviously we're doing this on YouTube where people can write into the comments and whatever. But with Twitter Spaces, just the verbal communication with people is a really cool aspect of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a differentiator and a huge benefit for Spaces is the level of interaction. And I think Also, it's a lot of folks have viewed it as an opportunity, to come up on stage, ask intelligent questions, have something, uh, important to say, right? And then start to make a name for themselves through that method. And
Yeah.
some of these spaces have huge audiences. I mean, Faroks can get into the thousands
Yeah.
at times.
Yeah, and we're looking into that as well with Lucky Trader, doing some Twitter Spaces and potentially like grouping with other teams or other people out there who it's just another way to expand your reach as well and get different. A lot of times these Discord servers can become hive minded, and it's a good way to get just different perspectives on things, which is really cool. And that's why I really enjoy this rug radio model, is because you're getting so many different viewpoints from it. And I think that always helps, at least me, like hearing different people's takes on things, because you don't just want to hear the same 10 people talk about their views, because it's all going to end up being kind of the same.
Yeah, it's a way to get out of the Discord echo chambers. And I think the other piece that I really like about it too is it also incentivizes content creators,
Yeah.
right? So by running a weekly recurring Rug Radio show, the host can also earn tokens, right? So there's incentive for us, for you and me, to try to host content under Rug Radio. Um, if we believe in Rug DAO, and want to be a part of the ecosystem. So I really like that incentive mechanism that's tied to this as well.
Yeah. And then the other thing, do you think there's that many risks involved with this? As far as like, that's one thing with the Twitter Spaces, is anyone could hop on and kind of say anything, and that's goes back to more of this like freedom of speech thing. But I think at least Farouk is, they're big enough at this point, and Rug Radio is already kind of that first mover advantage in a way, where I think right now they're kind of the standard. But do you really think that they have any sort of competitor risk right now?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and to anyone listening, watching, I think we've been painting a very bullish case so far, and I do want to lay out the risks or the bears. So first is like new entrant competitor risk, right? Like if we believe Web3 is the future, and I certainly do, there will be more decentralized media companies that will be entering the space, right? But certainly, Rug Radio has first mover advantage there. Um, I think the biggest risk that I see is in the execution of a DAO led operation. Um, Certainly, we've seen a lot of instances already, even just in the last 6 months, of DAOs kind of falling down. And I believe the reason behind that is you still need a central team that's leading that's steering the ship, driving the boat forward. Um, and I haven't seen that much yet about who the Rug Radio leadership team is going to be. I mean, this is a project that has huge visions, right? So creating a decentralized media platform for Web3. And I love the vision. That's going to take some real firepower behind it. And not a knock on Farouk, but Farouk's doing Twitter spaces every single day, right?
Yeah.
For several hours. And to me, I don't think he has time to think about, like a director of operations type role in leading a media platform operation. So that is a risk that I see, but I've got some folks who are closer to Farouk and some of the other investors, and I think they're meeting in a few weeks to try to get some answers to those questions and hear a little bit about some hiring plans for who's going to be kind of the leadership structure on the operation side.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that we've talked about a little bit recently. I think on the Super Nifty episode, which if you're watching and haven't seen that, that was a really cool interview that I did on Tuesday. But what we were talking about a little bit of is creating it as a business, and it seems like the brands and NFTs that succeed are the ones that start creating the business model and treating their project as a business. So something like Cool Cats a few weeks ago got some people were talking negatively about it, but they like added a CEO and they just start to create this as a business versus just like a PFP project and like pictures on the internet. Like you actually have to think about long term paying employees or getting people on there who are consistently doing things or helping grow the brand and create SEO efforts and things like that.
I think it's such a good point, and I 100% agree, and I'm fully aligned. And I think like a lot of other people who were in the space in 2021, I chased projects, just flipping JPEGs, right? Not caring about the founding team or, a multi-year roadmap. But as I've evolved my investing strategy over time, I I now look at it again as like investing in small businesses, and I want to know who's running the show, what their business experience is. Do we feel like they're capable of leading this project across the next few years? Because that's what it's going to take, for to be successful and not go to zero. We always hear the old adage, 99% of NFT products are going to go to zero.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be the ones who don't have the proper leadership for the most part,
Right.
right? So it's a definite shift. I can feel the shift. I thought the Cool Cat CEO hire or appoint was a great decision. I've heard rumors that Yuga Labs has essentially doubled their team, and they're
Yeah.
now touching like 30 or 40 full-time folks. So I mean, that's a really bullish indicator to me of how serious they're taking it,
Yeah.
and their plans for that project.
Yeah. And this might actually be a good pivot into the Cool Pets. So we finally got the finished Cool Pets minting today. Earlier, it was about 4 hours ago. Not surprisingly, went pretty quick in a couple minutes. And I mean, it's been pretty bullish, even with the delays and some people, obviously flooding from that and the market in general. A lot of the bigger name projects have had a little pullback recently, but the Cool Pets have basically stayed above 2 ETH this whole time as it's gone up, and now we're up to over 18,000 minted. The rest are for Cool Cats holders. They have, I think it's an infinite amount of time in order to claim the egg. So there's about 1,800 or so that have yet to be claimed, and you could argue based on things like the Clone X vials hitting 30 ETH of that, and some of these the mutant serums. You could argue that some people might just be taking that strategy of holding as long as possible. But what do you think about this mechanic that they had today? So you had to like solve a puzzle. Basically, it was like a word puzzle, and that was their way of combating against the bots.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely interested to see it, and from what I understand, I think it worked pretty effectively. Right before the show, I saw that some bot did get through and got about 200. But for as high profile of a mint as this was, to keep a bot supply down to 200, I think you definitely call a win. So I think kudos to the team. I know they caught a lot of FUD around the delays, but it seems like they certainly did it with the right intentions, right? They wanted a fair launch. They didn't want bots to get the entire supply. We've seen what that does to the market when a bot gets 30% of the supply, and it's just pure undercutting. Nobody buys. So I think they definitely looked out for the community. But I'm curious for your thoughts. So I'm not a Cool Cats owner, so I've just been kind of watching this one from afar. I
Yeah.
feel like you've been a bit more involved. I think my first question is, what was your reaction to the delays, and has that changed your opinion on the Cats team, or it reinforced it?
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird. I don't have a super strong opinion because my thought is almost all of these have a delay at this point, and I do think to an extent that it's reasonable how they reacted to it. Um, they obviously had 20,000, right? So let's give 10,000 to existing holders. Let's give most but not all supply out to allow lists group up with different projects. Like I thought it was really cool that they were doing it that way. But the community decided that they wanted a public mint as well. So that's really why they were doing this public mint aspect, because the people wanted it. But and this is something I think maybe we'll talk about a little after as well. Just the way that minting works right now is a little weird in general. But I just think when something's so hyped like this, I wasn't that surprised that they couldn't handle the traffic at first. Um, Obviously, it isn't nice to get things pushed back, because then all of a sudden you're doing something at the new time that they have set up. I know some people, like, they were ready to go. It was depending on the day of the week. Like they've picked 4 different days of the weeks that these things are getting minted on, and each time it pushes off the game as well. And
Mhm.
so, I bought a cool cat ahead of this, and like with the idea of it. So the cool cat price has pulled back a decent amount since then. So obviously that has a lot to do with the price. But I think part of the reason why this is holding up is they came out with the mechanics of like how much you're going to earn, and the pets ended up earning a little more than I think people were expecting. So I think that probably helped keep the price up on it. But I don't know, like CloneX, a lot of people, I think people overreact a lot with these things. I'd almost rather the drop come out this way, because then people, they saw what the actual drop mechanic was. A lot of them are happy because they were able to get one, versus going into it, oh, is it a gas war? Am I going to have to put in 15,000 Gwei or something crazy? So I think when it came down to it, a lot of people got in, if they minted it, got in for about 1 ETH or less, and they're seeing the floor is above 2, like the demand is there. Um, so I'm generally okay with it. It was definitely a little disappointing how many times it kept getting pushed back, but I do think they handled it decently well. I do believe in the things like the DDoS attacks, because people are trying to bot this, because it's obvious it was a quick 2x. So if you can get, like, that one bot got 200 of them, like you can come out of this with hundreds of ETH in profit if you really want to, and are able to break through the system. So um, it was a little discouraging how many times it got pushed back, and a couple of those times they were slow to update people on it.
Mhm.
But this kind of goes back to the business point as well, where it's like you want to figure out what the issue is first, and then let the people know, and you make sure that you write out something that people reading it are going to be okay reading, and not get overly overreacting to. So that side of it, like, I'm glad they didn't just jump in and say, oh, like, it could be this, it could be that. Like, they tried to figure out what the reason was first. But I mean, my overall takeaway from all of this is almost based on what people are saying with there's a couple people that posted like what the expected average like milk production is,
Mhm.
and it almost made it seem like the cool cats were should be closer in price to the pets than original. So that part was a little more discouraging. Like, I almost wished that the cool pets earned less, because you could get 4 or 5 of these cool pets for the price of one cool cat, but it's not earning 4 to 5 times less. It's earning almost like 2 times less. So that was a little more discouraging, like, as a cat holder. But I do think there's probably going to be value by being a cat holder, like the OG of projects. But um, yeah, I guess my thought is going to be, how is this going to come out with like ape coin and the
Mhm.
mutants versus board apes now?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go. Is now, are people worried or excited about how the ape token mechanisms are going to be, if they're going to fall, in line with this? That's actually interesting for me to hear your thoughts on the token. I actually hadn't seen the milk tokenomics yet, so I'll have to take a look at those after the show. That's going to be really anticipated, right? This is the first blue chip blue chip NFT project that has released a token, right? Or I guess Pixel Vault.
Usable is
Okay.
how I would word it. Yeah, yeah, because it's like the POW token that you can earn it, but you're not using it yet in a game or anything.
So I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on it. Certainly, with the volumes of tokens that you earn per day, it seems like the price is going to be relatively low on
Yeah.
the milk token. So that'll be interesting to see, how unit bias comes into play, and we know, from the Shiba days how much the market loves being able to purchase large quantities of something,
Yeah.
regardless of market cap. But I'm curious. We chatted a little bit about this. Is do we think all the Cool Pets owners understand the game, and how the mechanisms of interacting with the pets is going to play out, or do they think they're just going to hatch a pet that's going to reveal here in a few days? Are we seeing the win reveal questions yet, or?
Yeah. So that's sort of my take right now is like as a Cool Cats owner, I do have the interest in this idea of like what is what is the overall like take on Cool Pets? Like, are people buying them to play the game, or are they thinking because they're showing as eggs? Oh, like when's the reveal going to happen? Do I have a one of one? Because I have seen people say that. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of people that have bought it and don't actually know that that is part of this. Where basically you have to start questing these eggs to grow it, and as it levels up, you start to see what the cool pet looks like. And then there's different items in the game that you can then develop it. Um, so it's almost like there are some one of ones in these eggs, but
Mhm.
you probably won't know for like a couple weeks. And that's if you're questing them each day. So you basically have to quest in order to earn the tokens, or if you're holding a cool cat. So that's still the benefit of holding the cat. It is going to earn more and it's passively.
Mm.
But yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that aspect of this. They and maybe some of them are buying it at 2 thinking, "Oh, I can sell it at 4 or 5 ETH because there's all this demand." So that'll be cool to watch the next few days. I'm assuming I think they're supposed to start the game tomorrow. Um, so my plan is to try to get one um, by the time that it launches. I'm hoping maybe throughout the day, like as hype dies down a little bit from it, I'm hoping to get one closer to 2. Um, but to me, I think I want it in order to play the game, but in a perfect world, I would have multiple with that flexibility that if this is something that's earning a good amount, my expectation for the price of milk is less than 5 cents, probably. Um, a cool
Same.
cat base is like 1,000 a day. And to me, like $50 a day, there's a lot of different passive tokens out there that are in that range. Obviously, it can be higher, but like the POW token right now is around 15 cents, and that's 1,000 per week. But like we were mentioning before, there's not like a reason to be buying those tokens right now. Here, say you want to level up your egg, if you have a cool cat, you have an advantage because you're getting that 1,000 per day on top of it. So, I mean, if I have a pet and a cool cat, um, I think the expected average would be like 1,700 a day or something. So I'm already earning about 3 pets worth compared to someone who only has pets. So that's the dynamic that I think is going to be kind of cool with this is there going to be a rush to start leveling these up? And then if there is a rush, are people that like the first person to have a fully formed pet, is that going to be something that's desired? Or like the first there's 4 different elements, like the first fire pet, the first water pet. Like I feel like that's going to have something. I wonder what the properties are going to be like if they're going to have anything like that. But That's what I'm kind of excited for, is to see like the gamified part of rushing to level your pet.
It's definitely gonna be exciting to watch. I think one interesting example that we can pull from, it's somewhat of a similar use case, is Capsule House. So they
Yeah.
just had the mechanism where you could burn a full Zodiac capsule set, all 12, to get a fully animated capsule NFT that was essentially a one of one with the Searlight background, and then the other artist did the character work. Those did not perform well. So I was of the camp that I thought, there would be high demand for those one on ones, and so far it hasn't. It's been underwhelming a little bit. What I'll be interested to see is how many people try to keep the virgin cool pet that hasn't been interacted with at all, and tries to who can hold out the longest, essentially similar to your Clone X Mint Vials concept.
Yeah.
But I feel like that could be a somewhat popular strategy, and if
Yeah.
it's too popular, then it won't be that valuable
Yeah.
anymore.
I kind of go back and forth with it. There's a lot of game theory that's involved with this, because it could be the type of thing where, say you had 5 pets, right? Um, you hold a couple back and level a couple up, but you could watch and see like what's, OP in which of the 4 elements is best. So you don't try to level it up at first because you want that flexibility later down the road. Or someone comes in 2 months from now and would rather start fresh and start earning from base up with the questing, because as you level up, you will earn faster and get the better rewards, better items, more sort of rare questing. So I think there's a couple different ways that you can go about saying like hold it as an egg, because you might want to level it up later when you figure out which of the 4 elements might be best, or which of the 4 are selling most later down the road, or you just have it and you don't touch it because of that idea, like unopened packs in Top Shot. It's just this idea of it's untouched, that some people like that as well.
I mean, honestly, just the fact that you can rattle off that many different scenarios
Yeah.
is bullish, right, on the game theory and just the level of thought that's gone into this. And I think the market's definitely speaking right now. I'm surprised that the floor has held up this well. So clearly there's strong demand, especially in what is a few weeks of a down market, and new mints have performed very poorly, and a lot of folks are burned. So I think it goes to show the real faith that folks have in this
Yeah.
product and team.
Yeah, and to compare it to something like DeFi Kingdoms, where there's a leveling aspect and summoning. Um, Sometimes, if you haven't summoned, which is their breeding process, um, those go for more in the open market, and like the lower levels um, can go for more if they have been like untouched, especially like the high end rarity stuff. But it's always interesting because it's like if you have a 10 of 10 summons, which means you haven't summoned yet, it's the max that you can have. Those go for that much more than a 9 of 10. Like the second you start, it's almost like you have to keep going, because it's that mid range where it's almost like, well, at that point you just got to keep leveling it up. So that'll be fun to watch. As sort of an outsider here, do you think you would potentially get into it, or is it one of those things where, because you don't like, and my idea is, if I didn't have a cool cat, I don't know if I'd be buying and playing it. So I wonder how many people are like in that camp.
Right. I'm still in the camp of let's watch and see. And playing both sides, we've definitely played the bull side here. I think the bear side is concern on the devs behind this team to be able to execute this game. Right.
Yeah.
After watching the mint get delayed, several times, and there's a lot of aspects to maintaining a P2E game on the blockchain, right? That everyone can trust and interact with. But the flip side is I've seen firsthand the Treasure and Bridge World game, and they've rolled that out in phases. There's been hiccups, and different portions of the game haven't been turned on or working at times, and the market kind of shrugged it off. So I think with how strong the Cool Cats community seems to be, at least from the outside. I think if there are bugs or hiccups in the game, they'll likely get shrugged off. But am I buying in right now at this price point? No, a little bit too high for me, but
Yeah.
I'll still be paying attention.
Right. Like in an ideal world, I think my number would be 5 of them, assuming like say that they were 0.1 each or something. I would want to try to have one of each element and one to hold as an egg. That's like the perfect world for me. But obviously right now that costs, 12 ETH or whatever. So personally, not trying to buy a ton, but that's more of the current price and just uncertainty of, like you said, like, is the game going to work? I think we found that with a lot of these games is they have a lot of hiccups early on, and we know if that happens early on, then the price will come down, and there's probably a cheaper entry point later. So then, yeah, let's go into sort of other mints happening right now, and it seems like the new meta with the whitelist meta in general, the way that they've been going, the Squiggles had this one today, which we can talk about it as well. They have this sort of rug risk involved with them. But what they did, and Serial Club is doing something like this. It's similar to what Azuki did. And what I was mentioning to you before the show is it seems like people, just in general, they like to take from one successful project and try to remake it in their own. They know that people are going to compare the two and be like, oh, they did that, they're successful. We've heard a lot of talk with the Zuki, the 721A, which I believe Serial Club's using. I'm not sure if Squiggle used that, did they? But basically, the idea of this current meta of a drop, it's whitelist. It's a little different than how the Cool Cats did, but basically they do a Dutch auction first. And for Squiggles, they had these two projects had different percentage of how many are going to be in Dutch auction, how many are whitelist. But basically, it's Dutch auction first, starting at something like 1 Ethereum. And then the whitelisters, in the Squiggles case, would be 0.4 Ethereum the next day. And then for Serial, how they're doing it is it's half of the price of what the Dutch auction ended at. And so what do you think of this? Because in my opinion, and some of the backlash on this is whitelisters aren't getting the first access to these NFTs. And that's what they're complaining about right now, is because you're already going to have people that are in there. And what if it goes up to, 2-3 Ethereum day one? People that were whitelisted are in a sense kind of screwed in that case. So what's sort of your initial take on this new sort of whitelist meta?
I think I'm in the opposite camp. I actually think the whitelisters have an even bigger advantage now. And first and foremost, that would only be a disadvantage if you're purely looking to flip and you want to be the first person to mint and the first person out when the supply is at its lowest. But the built-in advantage that the whitelisters have here is everyone has to speculate on the Dutch auction side. And I think the most recent trends that we're seeing is these Dutch auctions are going to go out high or near the high level, as long as that's below 1. And I think originally like Serial Club was going to do 1 and they lowered it to 5. My gut is the Dutch auction is going to sell out at 0.5.
Yeah.
The benefit for the whitelisters are they're going to get a 0.25 mint price then, along with the time difference between the Dutch auction and whenever the whitelist is. And most likely the market's going to go up. And at least that's what we've seen for products with significant demand. And of course, each product is different. But in the whole pre-reveal hype cycle, we typically see the price point go up. So the whitelisters are going to be at an advantage. They're going to have a more attractive mint price and also more information at their hands on whether it's a good decision to mint or not. And if the market can't hold up, after the Dutch auction, if it tanks before the whitelist slot, then don't mint, right? So I think it's always had your advantage to have more information. So I think this mint style is good for the whitelisters. I haven't fully digested it, if it's the ideal new style yet or not. I'll definitely be interested to watch this one play out though.
Yeah, and I think yeah, I'm in a couple different discords where um one of them that I'm in, we have a grinders channel where they try to find these white lists and get on them. And a lot of times what they do is this seems to be part of the meta as well. The people who have whitelist and you have 24 hours, they usually wait. Either you wait and mint at night when gas is lowest, or you wait and see, oh, like what's the price action? Is it selling above mint? And that generally is a good way to do it. I think some things you want to mint right away because it gets like a little frothy, and we saw that with the cool pets. So that's what I did with my cool pet is I minted it right away because they were selling for like 3.5 plus Ethereum, and I thought, there's another 15,000 plus supply coming in the next. At that point in time, I thought it was in the next week. Obviously, it's been a couple weeks now, but it's always cool how there's like different strategies behind it. But what do you think about the sort of downside risk of this, right? Where we saw it a little with the squiggles, where it minted out at 1 ETH, then the next group of people are getting it at zero point 0.4. They can quickly undercut the floor under 1 ETH and come out profitable. So does it depend on how many people are in the whitelist and sort of the gap between it? Or do you like what happens when there's projects like that? Because then no one's going to want to be minting it because the expectation is the price is going to go down.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought, and it adds a level of game theory into the decision to participate in the Dutch auction or the public sale. So I think you alluded to it, but the way Serial Club is going to work is Dutch auctions first, then whitelist at half of whatever the final cost of the Dutch auction. Then public sale, I believe, is same price as the whitelist got, if I'm not mistaken. So there's 3 potential entry points,
Mm-hmm.
and it definitely changes the calculus, right? So maybe folks are less likely to fire on the gun in the Dutch auction, and overall, that's probably healthy and
Right.
good, because where we've seen these products fall down is where the mint price is too high out the
Yeah.
gate, and it's they're paying too much for an unproven commodity, and then they get burned. Right,
Yeah.
that's the worst outcome.
And I think sort of an opposite mechanic is how, not sure if you follow the FCF Baller Collective. They had the opposite mechanic where the whitelisters got to go first at the cheaper price.
Hmm.
And because it was the whitelisters going, it didn't fully sell out during the pre-sale. But then the next set of people are having to mint at double the price. So then they're having a little more trouble selling it out because now the floor on OpenSea is below what it costs to mint more. So I guess this opposite dynamic sort of helps with that, where you're not guaranteeing it, but the likelihood is when that next set of minters go to mint, they're minting at what's probably cheaper than the OpenSea floor.
Right, which is I think the dynamic that you always want, right, for the perfect case scenario. But I think my larger takeaway is it's nice to see some innovation in the minting process. It kind of goes to the composability of Web3 and open source code. Azuki's built this amazing contract. It's open source, so other projects can use it. That's the starting point. And now they're also seeing how other minting processes have maybe fallen down and are trying to do something new. So, I certainly appreciate that. I think we hear a lot of chatter about folks who just want to go back to the old days of the old fashioned gas wars and just, slam the gas, and those who want it, get it. But I'm not in that camp. And I think the reason is I think the bots are so much more sophisticated now that none of us would have any shot in a true gas war,
Yeah.
old fashioned, for a high profile project. So
Yeah.
I guess I like to see the experimentation with these new minting styles. Is this specific one going to be the Grail style? We'll see, but it'll certainly be
Yeah.
interesting to watch.
I think generally speaking, it's pretty fair. A lot of the people in these specific communities have complained a lot about it. Like we saw it with Serial Club. They announced it, and then within, I don't know, 12 hours, they've already cut the price of starting the Dutch auction. So, I mean, they're still listening to their community. And at the end of the day, like, I think it was pretty likely that it would probably sell out above zero point 0.5 if that auction started at 1. So, um, to me, I mean, it's a cheaper entry point for me to try to go at it. So obviously I'm going to like it, but sort of the talk on Twitter and stuff like that right now, and maybe you have an opinion on this, but 4 6 months ago, all the mints were 0.08, 0.04. Like there were hardly any mints that were over zero point 0.1 ETH. Now it seems like any mint, especially if it's hyped in any sort of fashion, is coming in at like 0.2 or higher. Do you think the initial minting price is becoming too high? Because, like, for me, even my concern is I like Squiggles, Cereal, and then like Cool Pets. There's probably going to be 2 other things minting like next week. Like I can't be just shooting 1 ETH at all these different projects. It almost has to make you like more concentrated in your bets. But do you think that these higher mint costs are bad, or is it helping make the market sort of concentrate on the better projects? It's hard to like call them better. I don't know if you bought into those beans, the ways to die, those beans, but they
I
minted
didn't.
at zero point 0.3, and I think their floor is like 0.2 now. So it creates a little more downside risk than in the past. Um, so what's your thought on like, are these all sort of minting out too high of a price?
I like it, and I like it because hopefully it's going to force the market participants to be smarter and use more scrutiny in the decisions. Right, if you just mint every project with no research, you're going to go bankrupt and you're going to be done, right? And with how many bad projects are flooding the market right now, it's going to force folks to actually choose and maybe spend some time researching. And I think that's a positive. And second, if you believe in the team and there's this level of demand, I'd rather the upfront primary sales go to form a war chest for the Azuki team to go out and start hiring and building out the global brand that they're trying to achieve than to send that money to the miners, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of it, but your point about the downside risk is certainly way higher than it's ever been. And it feels like a bit of a healthy reset, right? We saw that in last September with Mechaverse, and it kind of set the stage for going too far too fast with still at that point unproven team, and then that floor going down 80%. Now we're seeing it with Hape and then several other projects. So it probably means some short-term pain for the market, especially as these funds are leaving the ecosystem and going to these project teams.
Yeah.
But hopefully it's overall more healthy for the ecosystem and people are learning from their mistakes. But what are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, because I think it almost forces you to choose smarter in a way. And if like to go into Squiggles, you have to really think about things. Like there were a bunch of tweets about it being a rug, and you had to start thinking like, is this worth that risk of throwing 1 ETH at it? If people are talking about it, things like Pixelmon, you know, it fell pretty quickly after it started minting. It
Yeah,
is really making you, which is kind of funny because this is somewhat of a joke. There's that those posts on Twitter that have been recently about like whitelist, and just people are hopping in and like faking sort of being excited about a project, but it almost makes it where you have to become a little more excited about the project. Like I was in the serial chat earlier today for whitelisters, and people are asking like what's the utility behind this? Like why do I have confidence spending zero point 0.5 Ethereum on it? And it's good, it's healthy, like you said, for people that ask those questions. And it's almost better where now we're seeing if you buy into a project like this, you've spent half Ethereum on it. So you probably are thinking about it a little harder than spending like 0.05 on it. So that's the part that I like about it. And the healthy reset side of it is maybe these projects are going to do it until they stop selling out.
Right.
So if people are going to think harder about it and they stop selling out, that's the way that the prices are going to come back down. Right now, they know that they can sell it out, especially if they have that hype.
Yeah, totally agree. And my current stance strategy, I'm not really minting anything for the most part, unless it's something that I feel like is absolutely a
Yeah.
slam dunk. And I'll share my thought process on these two products. I took one look at Squiggles this morning before I even saw the rug risk, and it comes across as a Doodles derivative in 3D right off the bat.
And that,
And my
well, that's what they
perspective,
started as. I'm not sure if you had heard of them at all before today, but I originally got on Squiggles having a doodle. I got a whitelist spot, and then they actually looked too much like the doodles, and the doodles were like threatening the DMCA portion of it. So they rebranded a little bit and then increased the price. It was kind of weird, but I got booted from whitelist when the doodles kind of came after them. I think they booted off people that were doodles. So I didn't mint partially from that like sore in my mouth in a way. But yeah, go ahead with the rest of
no,
it.
no, and those are two big red flags, right? And I've
Yeah.
got the experience with the Toads ecosystem and how all those derivative projects went. And for those who are newer, guys, I'll be just flat honest. Derivative projects go to zero. They're all zero. You might be able to make some quick flip profits on derivatives, but the market has told us there's really no ongoing demand for those. And I think I haven't fully formed an opinion on Serial Club. We're 5 days out. The art is cool, but it feels a little derivative like to me too. I mean, like I hate seeing that rainbow puke on the headliner, right? That is the iconic Doodles art, and they're
Yeah.
using the Doodles color scheme. And I think the idea behind Serial is cool. The roadmap and the utility is a little bit light. So I'm leaning towards a no go on this one. But we'll see. I'll be looking into it more over the next few days.
Yeah. And I think for me, I have a whitelist for Serial Club. Um, so I probably will mint it for that reason. I think the likelihood of it selling out at 0.5, if that's high, like I might mint another one. But it kind of goes back to the long-term thinking of it, where is this going to be one that is more of like a quick flip because of that? Are people going to be thinking of it that way? Because if people are, that's how it starts going down very quickly. Um, and I think things like Azuki, they came out, they had this pretty massive roadmap, and like they're going to do the streetwear brand, and there's a lot that they had involved. And some of these other ones that are newer, like you said, like it's not exactly a derivative, but you can tell like they partnered with Doodles for Whitelist. They partnered with some of these other projects, and they're trying to take that similar like pastel colors from there. So are they just trying to work off of someone else's success, like we were talking about earlier? That could be true. And that's what makes it harder with some of these PFPs right now, is to differentiate. And right, like Squiggle, did they differentiate enough? It seems like maybe not. I'm not sure how much of it is from that FUD of if they're a rug or not earlier today. So yeah, I think the big thing is like be more cautious of what you're going into. are you okay with it going to zero? Because things like, what do we have, like creature toads and croaks? I think those were two ones that seemed pretty hyped going into it, and they both kind of never really went anywhere from there. So it's hard. You have to find these teams that are willing to continue to bring value over time.
Yeah, I think a fundamental question for me, and it's very applicable, is if the price goes down, so you buy in at 0.5 and it's 0.25 tomorrow. Are you happy because you have the chance to buy more, or are you sad and upset and running for the exits? And if you're running
Yeah.
for the exits, it means you probably didn't have a fully thought out investment thesis before you went into the project. And I think ultimately, the more people we can get to actually build thesis, have a plan for what they want to invest in, I think is ultimately good for the whole space.
Yeah, and that's um I have a friend who that's his current thesis with holding an ape is at this point, like, would you be happy if it went up to 150 ETH? Would you be sad if it went down to 50? And so that's sort of how you have to think on a lot of these things is like, if it starts going down, like you said, are you going to buy more? I had that thought with the cool pets. Like if cool pets got to 1 ETH, I'd be a buyer at that point. It's kind of like Ethereum, the coin itself, right? Like at what point, like at $2,000, are you buying more? Um, that's a good point. Yeah, I haven't really thought of it that way, but a lot of people are willing to dump once the price goes down, 25% or something. And if a lot of people are thinking that way, then it's probably not that sustainable, right?
Yeah, and it cascades in the floor undercutting, and we see the 30% listings, which we've seen in some of the anime projects across the last week, which is death spiral
Right.
a bit.
Right. So things like that, where are people just chasing because there's this talk that anime meta is like a thing, so people are following the success of Azuki, but a lot of those projects, like, they went up into multiple ETH pre-reveal, and then when the reveal happened, they just started dumping, and now, I mean, as soon as like point 0.3 Ethereum floor or something, like that one's come down a lot, and you're wondering, it's like, well, are you buying for the right reasons? And it's good to look back after and say, like, should I have bought this? What were the signs that I shouldn't have bought this? So sometimes it's good, like learning experience wise. Obviously, like you'd hate to watch something go from 2 ETH to under 1 ETH and hold it all that way through. But um, there's a lot of cool projects that they don't immediately go up right away, but it's fun to be like a part of the project, and you're watching like things that are coming in the future. Like I hold a couple lemons, and like they haven't really done much recently, but they've been pretty flat on price. And I think there's a couple cool things that they've talked about doing that, like, long term, I could see there being talk about it again. And what's funny is we did a stream yesterday with the Sprite Club. That's an upcoming project, which they're actually pretty cool. If you're listening to this, definitely go back and listen to their minting process. It's pretty unique where they're trying to build the community first. And it's kind of like allow the people who actually want to be part of the community to mint. Um, and it's really cool to see like the people that I had giveaways for their whitelist last night, and everyone that had a giveaway, we had the mutual server of the lemons, and I thought that was kind of cool. But um, yeah, it's cool even in these like cheaper projects. If they have a stable floor, then that's almost like, this is one that is probably has a lot of staying power and is only like one or two announcements away of going back up.
It is, and I think the flip side, one model that we haven't talked about, and this is actually the model that Treasure DAO is using right now. It's every product is free mint,
Yeah.
and we're starting to see more of that. Also on ETH-based projects. I'm blanking on some of the projects we saw last week, but there were a few that came out as free mints. But then the onus is totally on the founding team to build and develop. The negative side is they've got less funds to at their disposal to work with. They're going to have to rely on the secondary sales, which we know is significantly less. but they've got a lot more skin in the game long term, right? And typically they'll hold back, a portion of the supply, right, as their equity or some type of mechanism like that. So I think that's another interesting minting style or meta to watch here if we see that catch steam. It's not going to be super popular right now when some of these products are catching 1 ETH Dutch auctions for 10,000.
Yeah.
But I think it could be one we see a little bit more of.
Yeah. And it's cool because like, well, how much was the turf mint? The
I
price of
want to say
it?
turf was
It
0.069.
was, oh, so it's less than 0.1. Yeah, a lot of these projects that are doing the whitelist gets to mint at like a cheaper price. But like you said with the treasure DAO, a lot of it is if you hold one asset, you can mint the next project. Maybe we'll see more of that, and it's less of this companion thing, but more of like say for Serial Club, instead of me as whitelist paying for 0.25, because Cool Pets, if you held a cat, you got to mint it for free, and then the whitelist had to pay 0.5. So maybe things like that where it's structured, where if you're an existing holder, you get it for free, and if you're non-existing holder, you get it for a little more. So definitely interesting, and I think just the whole whitelist, people are trying to figure out the best way to just mint out their project and allow other people in who in some cases, like a lot of people can't just buy a doodle or a cool cat or an Azuki in order to get on a whitelist. So it's cool how like the cool cats did it, where they partner with a bunch of teams that gave out their own allow list spots or through Twitter, and kind of giving a lot of different types of investors the ability to get in there. So definitely cool. And I think it's always changing, obviously, but right now it seems like this might be the process that works best. This sort of Dutch auction for some to get that like price discovery, and then from there give whitelist a little lower price than what the Dutch auction ended at. So yeah, maybe this one has staying power. It seems like people are trying to follow this model as of now. We'll see in the next few weeks. Obviously, like we're in an interesting part of the market. And Super Bowl Sunday, we'll see what type of ads and NFT talk happens from there. But in general, I think we're in an okay spot in the market, right? Like I'm not too concerned overall.
Yeah. No. It's been certainly liquidity's come down a bit. We're already today's going to be a pretty decent day. We're at 113 million here with a few hours left to go, so it's not going to be down only. We're going to see a little bit of a spike. I think people are concerned already about the market turning bear. I just come back to our bear days, our down days are 100 million now,
Yeah.
and back in November it was 50 million. So we're already 2x. So I certainly still feel good about it, but definitely keep an eye on the daily candles to know the overall market volume that's coming through. It's always a good indicator. But I feel like there's a lot of focus on the Super Bowl event. Do you think we're going to see NFT commercials?
Yeah. So actually, I just it's funny that you said that the Toads just had a tweet. Let me bring this one up real quick
Yeah.
before we head out here in a second. But um, so cryptos just put, Croak and Bud Vibzer is their ad. So Bud Light already came out with the nouns as being connected to them for a Super Bowl ad. Obviously, we know Cryptoad's also a Gremlin project. So I think that could be cool if there's a Budweiser ad. Like nouns and Bud Light are already doing something. It would make sense that Toads and Budweiser. We've seen those commercials in the past in the Super Bowl. They kind of always have the Ribbit commercials. So I don't know. That would be kind of cool, right?
It makes a ton of sense. If I had to bet, I think BAYC is going to be out there in some capacity. the nouns it seems like we're going to see. And I think Toads is probably my number 3 on my on my Super Bowl power rankings for NFT projects. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see all 3 of those. Now from there, I think it gets a little more interesting on which, if any, other projects we might see.
Yeah. Cool. So, yeah, I think was there anything else that you wanted to touch on? I feel like we had a good amount of stuff that we talked about.
I think we hit it.
So, yeah, we'll be back on Monday for sort of our week ahead kind of stream, and we'll definitely let people know if we start doing things like Twitter Spaces. We're potentially getting into. And then I guess what else is there anything else you want to plug? I know you do your show tomorrow, right?
Yeah, go ahead. If you're not following me, I'm at Tyler Did It on Twitter. And then I run a show on Tuesdays and Fridays. So I'll be live at 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow to recap the weekly action in NFTs. So go ahead and tune in for that.
Cool. Yeah, and like we mentioned before, we'll add stuff in the show notes as far as our links go. And yeah, I hope everyone has a good weekend. And with the Super Bowl coming, like it'll be very, very cool to start talking about that next week and to see what happens. It sounds like the Bored Apes aren't doing a halftime show as people were originally thinking. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how much coverage NFTs get on the Super Bowl at large. But besides that, yeah, have a good weekend, everybody. And yeah, we'll catch you next time.